Hey there, MRA, my Real Africanists. This is Marie Ya Jouf, the Real Africanist, and welcome to my channel. Right? If this is your first time here, I thank you so much for coming. And if you have been here before, I thank you so much for coming back, right? I really appreciate you all being here and taking time out of your busy lives to engage with my channel and listen to what I have to talk about, right? So on this channel, I talk and teach about African history, the way Western voices and narratives influence and control the African story in media and in the field of African studies. And of course, I talk about current African affairs, what is happening now, right? I do my best to convey to my audience how the events of the past have a direct impact on what's happening now in Africa and throughout the African diaspora, right? As a African historian, I like to say that I talk about Africa for real, okay? And the reason why I say that is because I'm not on here just to pass on information. I'm quite sure we all have enough information, right? We're on information overload. I'm not on here just to hear myself talk or because I think that I know everything about Africa or even that I have all of the answers, right, to the issues that Africa and the African diaspora population are enduring, right? But I do what I do. I am on here because I care so much about Africa, right? I care so much about the global African population. And most of all, I care about the future of African youth. And with that, I really want to see Africa win, right? I really want to see Africa take her rightful place on the world stage, right? I really want Africa to be liberated, okay? And I believe that understanding African history as it pertains to the present is a key component of African liberation, right? Like I said, as a historian, I understand, right, on a foundational level that the past and the present are not exclusive events at all. They are congruent and they are mutually inclusive, right? Especially as it pertains to the liberation struggles of African people and the tactics that have been used and are still being used by the West and even by people among our own race, right, to keep African people divided and to keep African people subjugated. Okay, and that is basically what I want to talk about today, right? So we'll start off here. If you have been following the news, right, and paying close attention, then I'm quite sure that you are fully aware that the U.S. has its sights, right, set on Africa, right? You can't miss that, right? Now that Africa has made it clear that Russia and China are strategic partners in their continuous effort to develop the continent, and now that tensions between America, Russia, and China are intensifying more and more each day, right? All of a sudden, you have America making this attempt to be Africa's best friend, right? And you have the American government wanting to appear, as always, to be Africa's saving grace, okay? The great white savior of poor little Africa, right? I mean, it's apparent, like I say, if you've been following the news or if you have been watching social media, then, you know, it's apparent, right? This redundant exercise in fake diplomacy that American government officials are putting forth, right, is ridiculous, right? And it's mind-boggling, and you can you can see right through it, right, like a clear glass of water, that is just it's bull crap, right, to say the least. And like I say, someone who really cares about Africa and has Africa's best interests at heart, and I'm quite sure you all do too, those of you who watch the channel and follow me and that you care a great deal about Africa's, what's happening in Africa now, and as well as Africa future. I'm quite sure you are hoping, just like I am, that African leaders, right, won't fail its citizens and continue to allow Africa and African people to be pawns in this Western game of chess, right? Like I say, it's blatantly obvious to anyone with eyes that the U.S. is up to its same old tricks, right? And that it's taking a page out of its historical playbook as to how the American government deals with Africa, okay? Again, I'm not sure if you know, but I think that was maybe a few months ago, you know, all of the African leaders were suddenly invited to the United States. And I know that this had not been planned ahead of time, right? But this was something that was orchestrated to bring African leaders to the United States, like I said, after they made it clear, after many of the African leaders made it clear that they were not siding with America on their position with Ukraine and Russia, right? And so I'm not sure what came out of that meeting, but for me, I believe, like you say, it was just the same old, a lot of rhetoric and a lot of talk, but no action. Which, if I could be a fly on the wall, or if I had anything to do with it, you know, they would not even be in the equation, right? But again, I do understand that America is a superpower, and I do understand the influence and control that America has. So you know, I do understand that this is a global world and a global economy, right? But again, it is my hope that African leaders stand on their principles and demand that America is accountable for presenting a just and fair agenda as it pertains to economic partnerships with the African continent, right? Again, African leaders were in America. And then last week, right, we had First Lady Jill Biden. She was in Namibia, and she was visiting Kenya as well. And then we also had VP Kamala Harris, who is visiting Ghana, Tanzania, and Zambia this week coming up, I believe. And some other American officials also were with Jill Biden when she visited Kenya, right? And then, of course, we have Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, who is all over the place, right? Making his rounds. Every time you look up, you see his face, okay? Blinken, he started his rounds in Africa last year, right? He was in Rwanda first. He was in Ethiopia, I believe. I think Ethiopia last year, but if not, he was definitely in Ethiopia about a week ago. And then a few days ago, he was in Niger. And he's probably visited a few other countries that I'm missing, right? But I'm quite sure, like I said, with this whole, continental tour of Africa, he'll be in more African countries, basically talking out the side of his neck, right? And if you were watching from other countries, what we say that here in the United States, and you probably have a saying that means that too, but basically it means that, somebody is talking trash and making these grandiose statements about what they're going to do when they really are not going to do anything, right? I remember last year when Blinken was in Africa, okay, I had been really paying attention to what was going on, and when he was in Rwanda, okay, like I say, I'm always skeptical when I see these these American officials in Africa, right? Because they want something. It's something that they are after, right? So he visited Rwanda and met with President Paul Kagame. So after his visit, I was on Twitter, right? And I noticed something that was very interesting, right? There was 2 tweets that were done about his visits, right? One was from President Paul Kagame's official Twitter site, and one was from Secretary of State Blinken's Twitter account, okay? And so I reshared both of these official tweets alongside each other on my Facebook page and as well as on my Twitter page to show my audience or my followers just how this game is played, right? The way these narratives are twisted in order to, like I say, paint Africa as a place that is always needing the help and the protection of the U.S., right? And also the way that these narratives are always conveyed to try to paint Africa in a negative light. And like I say, again, in a way that says that Africa is always in need of conflict resolution. And of course, again, like I say, the great white savior has to be the ones to resolve these conflicts, right? So I wish I had the images to show you, but like I said, I'm working on that, right? I'm still new on here, but I wish I had the post to show you, but instead I'm just going to read it right quick, okay? So on President Kagame's Twitter account, it was very simple, right? It said, this morning, President Kagame received U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken for discussions on strengthening the bilateral partnerships as well as security in the region, right? Just very simple, straight to the point, okay? But then if you go over to Blinken's account, right, his tweet said, or his official tweet said, met with Urugwiro, and that's Kinyarwanda, and I'm trying to learn, so if you're watching from Rwanda, don't laugh at me, right? But it's Urugwiro, right, village, which is basically President Kagame and his team, right? So it said Blinken met with President Kagame and his team about the U.S.-Rwanda relationship and how to reduce tensions and ongoing violence in the region, right? Always those key words: reduce tension, ongoing violence, right? We also discussed U.S. concerns about democracy and human rights in Rwanda, right? Those other key words, human rights and concerns, right? democracy and human rights, the key words that they always throw around, right? To, like I say, position themselves in this position of higher, more moral authority, as if they are not on the same level as African leaders, right? And so he's also continued to say, we are concerned about the wrongful detention of Paul Rusesabagina, right? And I think we all know that he is the gentleman that the movie Hotel Rwanda was made about, right? And I'm quite sure, like I said, if you follow African affairs, then we all know the controversy surrounding that situation, okay? We won't go into that. But I just wanted to, again, just paint the picture, right? To show you how these two narratives are completely different, right? It's always African leaders, and I, commend them for that. They always attempt to, treat each other, treat people with respect, right? And be diplomatic in their approach, and always show the equality of parties that are involved. But like I say, on the American side or the Western side, there's always this need, again, to present themselves as, these moral leaders, right? As if, they are the ones that are always in a superior position, right? They always, again, throw these words out there in the public sphere to, from my position, to promote conflict and to keep this divide and conquer strategy alive and well, right? And again, to promote themselves as some kind of moral leaders and authoritative figures who are always so concerned about the human rights in Africa and other smaller nations, So, like I say, and my response is like, yeah, right, because they have proven, right, time and time again, that they are some of the biggest bullies, that's on the face of the earth, and they are one of the biggest threats to human rights all around the world, right? There's always war going on, in these other smaller countries, or in these other countries around the world who cannot afford for war and destruction and all of that stuff to be taking place on their continent, right? Which actually adds to the issues that they are already facing. But like I say, again, they claim to be, these moral leaders who only have everybody's best interests at heart. And we know that that is false. That is false, and it is so hypocritical. Okay. And so the same thing happened last week when Blinken was in Ethiopia. And I was kind of surprised and taken aback that he was in Ethiopia, right? I know that they do have, like I said, bilateral relations, and they do, have a relationship. But with everything that happened last year with the No More movement, and with the pushback against Western media's portrayal of Ethiopia and the war in the news, right? I was really surprised to see Blinken in Ethiopia. But anyway, he was there, and of course he was at the podium. He was at some meeting, and of course, like I said, he always has a microphone stuck up to his mouth, and he was talking in a caring way about the devastation that has been caused by the war or the conflict between the TPLF, the Tigrayan People Liberation Front, and the Ethiopian government, right? He talked about how America has been strategic partners with Ethiopia over the years, how they have committed vast resources for humanitarian aid and education, right? And he talked about how both the Ethiopian government and the TPLF need to take accountability for the atrocities that were committed during these conflicts, right? He talked, like I say, so resolute about there was atrocities on both sides and this and that. And I'm quite sure there were, and I'm not denying that. And like I say, it breaks my heart to see Africans in conflict. I don't care where it is, on the continent or outside of the continent. It bothers me to see us as African people at war with one another, right? But my question is about this accountability thing, right? Where is the accountability for what America has done all around the world, right? Where is the accountability for all the people, the men, women, and children that they have killed, right? Where is the doggone accountability for what they have done to their African American citizens, right? And what they continue to do with their African American citizens? Where is the accountability for that, right? You never hear any accountability for that. There's this ongoing talk about reparations and things like that, but and that's a good thing. But how long are the talks going to go on? When is there going to be some action behind those talks, right? And it's not only about the economic part. Where is the reparative justice for the physical and psychological damage that has been caused to people of African descent, right? Where is the investment in the communities that were destroyed by with the support of the American government, right? And again, back to what we were talking about, where is America's accountability for the role that it has played in creating these civil conflicts all throughout Africa? I mean, in Somalia, Libya, the Congo, Niger, and actually in the TPLF conflict itself. I mean, according to some of the accounts that I have read, right? Now, I can't really verify that right now, but from what I understand, like I say, in historical terms, the U.S. has played a significant part in this ongoing conflict, right? So where is that accountability? Okay, and see that is the kind of thing that that I talk about. That's the influence and that's the control that these Western voices continue to have over how Africa is, like I say, portrayed in the media and in educational narratives, right? And like I say, it bothers me that these leaders always want to label African leaders who resist their controls as dictators, and they always want to talk so arrogantly about these political coups that take place in Africa. But, they never talk about the part that they play in the political coups that take place in Africa. And like I say, so it's just so hypocritical, right? And the way they always focus on that, they focus on the negative all the time, always focusing on issues that make African people and African leaders seem as if they're hopeless and they just cannot get it together, right? But you never hear about the fact that in our country, in America itself, during its transition to a democracy outside of, once they transitioned from being a colony of Britain, right? You never hear that the first president of the United States, George Washington, there was actually an assassination attempt on his life, right? And there was an assassination attempt on many other presidents that came after him, right? In the last 100 years, there have been 4 U.S. presidents that have been assassinated. And you can go look that up. I'm not just saying that, right? And many more have received death threats and have had attempts on their lives, including well-known presidents like Clinton, Reagan, Bush, the daddy, Carter. And of course, Obama, you know Obama, right? He had, so I remember when his first term in office, there was reports that he had so many threats on his life that his website had to be taken down because they couldn't handle all of the threats, right? But this is stuff that they never talk about. They never focus on. They focus on the reverse and try to make everybody, and Africa and other nations included, right? But I'm talking about Africa. Nations seem as if somehow they are an anomaly, right? That they are different, that they are unique from everybody else. And that's not true, right? And it's not, someone said last time that basically in the comment section that we have too much to do to be worried about what they think about us. But it's not, that is not my concern at all, really, what they think about us and what people say about us. My concern is what we think about ourselves, right? And how we take these narratives as people of African descent and internalize these narratives and look at ourselves from the lens that these Western voices are putting out there, right? That is my major concern. You know, my major concern is with changing our perceptions of ourselves and for changing our understanding of what has been done to us in the past so we can understand exactly why we continue to face these same old issues over and over again. And then maybe our youth, you know, we have some very powerful young people that are coming along. Maybe our youth will be able to figure all this stuff out, right? And get us as people in the position that we need to be in, that we can take full responsibility for ourselves and also be able to create the Africa we want and good lives, right? Basically for our people, because that's basically what every human being wants, right? They want a liberty and they want a good life, right? And so, again, I don't want to keep on going over this and over this, right? But like I say, these Western powers and these voices are quick to talk about government corruption, to show images of civil unrest in African countries, and even have the audacity to send observers to Africa to oversee African elections, right? But then in the same hypocritical vein, they downplay that the fact that the American federal government is basically totally divided when it comes to government policy, right? And that's why it's so hard to get anything done. So basically, big business is the driver of government policies, right? And that's all it is. It's not about the people, it's about what big business wants, right? And you can tell this by looking at what happened at the U.S. Capitol and how that is being downplayed, right? And how Biden barely ever mentions it, and how all of these people in government and in big businesses are actually trying to make this very significant event appear minuscule, right? And like it was just a few disgruntled whites who did this, and that's not true. It was organized with the help of government officials, right? And with the help of some of those who are in big business, right? They call it a insurrection, but believe me, if something like that had happened in Africa, it wouldn't be called an insurrection, right? Like I say, that's the way they have these play on words. It would be called a violent political coup, right? That's what it would, attempted coup or attempted assassination on the life of an African president, right? And you know how I get, right? But that's what it would have been called. And And like I say, they never mention about what's happening here when it comes to African American voter suppression and disenfranchisement, right? You never hear them mention anything about that. But every time Africa has an election, just like with the last one in Nigeria, right? They were talking about how there was going to be violence and how it was going to turn out this way and turn out that way. And as far as I know, there hasn't been any of that. I'm not quite sure on that point, right? So don't quote me on that, but it did not turn out the way that they said it was going to turn out. And again, like I say, that's just a way that our story, the African story, is portrayed in media and, like I say, in academic circles to make African people appear to be less civilized, right? It's just so hypocritical. And if I was an African leader, I would not put any faith in anything that any Western leader or political party says, right? I would take the advice of African American writer James Baldwin, and I would say to them, to their face, I can't believe anything you say because I see what you do. And that is it in a nutshell. Anybody can say anything, but the proof is in the pudding, right? Actions speak louder than words, right? And that's why when people like to say, again, they say forget about the past, Black people, we live in the past, we need to move on. That is just utterly ridiculous. How can we move on? And how can you say that when this kind of hypocrisy continues to happen over and over again, and African people continue to suffer as a result, right? I wanted to make this two parts, but I think I'm going to go ahead and finish this out, right? And so if you want to take a break in between, maybe you take a break and come back, okay? But I want to go ahead and finish this, talking about these narratives and how they are portrayed. So I was reading an article in the New York Times last week, right? And so I want you to listen to the headlines of this article, right? It says, "A new Cold War looms in Africa as U.S. pushes against Russian gains." Okay? Now, this article was written, again, in the New York Times, and by this writer, Declan Wash. In this article, he is reporting that the U.S. recently warned Chad's president. Now, listen to this. Recently warned Chad's president that Russian mercenaries were plotting to kill him and 3 senior aides, and that Russia was backing Chadian rebels amassing in the neighboring Central Africa Republic, right? He also is reporting that Russia is courting sympathizers inside of Chad's ruling elite, including a cabinet member and a half-brother of the Chadian president, right? Now, did you hear that? Now, what does that sound like to you? That's why I'm saying, how can you move on and get past things when this kind of stuff still happens? Is this not the same kind of rhetoric and propaganda and bull crap that has happened in Africa in the past and that continues to happen over and over and over again, right? To continue to foster this divide and conquer between African people and African nations, right? I mean, all of a sudden, since France is being pushed out of this region, they've been pushed out of Burkina Faso and Mali, right? And Russia and this Russian affiliated Wagner group is supposedly having some influence over, these Western and Central African countries, which I hope not, right? Again, I'm hoping that these African leaders are negotiating their best interests at heart. But how all of a sudden this top secret intelligence has come to light, right? So you're going to tell me that you had evidence of the fact that someone was trying to kill the Chadian president all the time, and you never told them, you never released this information until now, until you want in, until now you want to negotiate your position in that area? You know, that, like you say, they are just full of crap. You know, like I say, I've been following this stuff for a long time, and you know, just sick and tired of these kind of tactics that happen behind the scenes that continue to hinder Africa's ability to win, right? And I strongly believe that African people have a right to know what's going on so they can understand what continues to happen and what continues to impact the life and the livelihood of African people, and that it's not always just about poor leadership. Sometimes it's about more than that. It's about these big ass, excuse my language, bullies, right? That continue to throw their weight around and continue to threaten the existence of these smaller countries and these smaller governments that do not have the military power to fight these big Western countries, right? Again, I was watching this other interview just the other day, and I've learned that the U.S. has a military drone base also in Nigeria, right? And on this drone base, which has been militarized, has over 800 U.S. military personnel, right? And from what I got from that interview is that this military presence started in Nigeria back in 2013. So that's what I'm saying. You see how far this stuff goes back and how it's still impacting what is happening in that region today, right? And again, this happened under Obama's administration, and it started with about 100 U.S. military personnel, but they put them there under the pretense of supporting the French in gathering intelligence, right? And from what I understand, is one of the last remaining American bases in that Sahel region there. And they're able to continue to keep those military personnel, and not only the military personnel, there's a huge number of foreign special forces and contractors that come in and out of that area under the pretense, again, of this so-called training and abetting African forces, or what the American government calls advise and assist missions, right? And that way they are able to continue to send these personnel there without congressional approval from the U.S. And this is normally what it takes to send military personnel overseas, right? But if they're not involved in conflict and war, then they can use this piece of legislation, some kind of legislation that was passed after 9/11, to have these this military in Africa, right, without approval from the United States government, and basically without the knowledge of the American people, okay? But all the time you hear about Niger being one of the poorest countries in Africa. And if you let them tell it, every country is the poorest country in Africa, right? We always hear that. But it's supposedly the poorest country in Africa, but they are over there fighting wars in this country, like you say, continuing to damage the land, right? So crops can't be grown there, you know. I'll talk about that at another time, but that's a connection that I never made, that they are actually damaging the soil because of this weaponry that is used, right? These different chemicals and things like that are used during wartime, right? Again, like I said, Niger is supposedly um, receiving millions from the U.S. to help fight terrorism in their country, but they can't receive money, right, to help them build their economy while you are steady destroying their country. Okay? And like I say, one of the most ironic things is that the U.S. is actually directly responsible for creating this uptick in terrorism and violence in this area, in Niger, in Chad, in Mali, and other regions, other countries in that Sahel region, right? And this terrorism can actually be traced back to Gaddafi's death, Muammar Gaddafi's death, right? And it's like I say, it's another fallout of Gaddafi's death. So what happened to Gaddafi not only impacted his family and his country, right? It impacted the whole continent of Africa, right? We understand what Gaddafi was trying to do. And if America cares so much about the stability of Africa, the growth of Africa, the people of Africa, then there would be no way that they would have killed Gaddafi based upon, like I say, what he was trying to do. But however, it is supposedly said that after Gaddafi's death, right, these rebels that once fought on the side of Gaddafi somehow looted his weapon stash, right, his stock of weapons, and found their way down into Mali, Niger, and Chad. Just somehow found their way back there. All of this stuff that it just doesn't sound right to anybody that is thinking with a clear mind. That's not ironic. That's not a coincidence that they found their way back there, right? And according to my research, it really goes back further than that. Because, again, like I say, it goes back to the attack on Saddam Hussein and the invasion of the Iraq war, right? Which, by the way, is being talked about all across Western media channels this week, because it's been 20 years that America invaded Iraq and killed Saddam Hussein based on basically flat out lies and propaganda, right? It's been 20 years. So this is what I'm telling you. This is why we need to learn about the past, because it directly impacts what is going on today. It's a continuous cycle, right? Things do not just happen out of a vacuum, okay? And so that's the message that I really want to drive home, right? So in talking about Saddam, we know that the war was based basically on faulty information, but like I say, now after the fact, and after hundreds of thousands of innocent lives were lost and destroyed, now these warmongering Western political apologists, right, they want to talk about how it was an unfortunate mistake. An unfortunate mistake. So this is how they frame what they do in the world. It was an unfortunate mistake, a stupid war, something that should have never happened. Of course it should not have ever happened. But they act like people can just come back, right? People can just reappear on the earth. Like the countries can just rebuild themselves, right? We talk about these contractors. They destroy, it's a cold-blooded game. That's all I say. it's a cold boiling game. They do their part. They destroy these countries. They destroy people's lives. And then they bring in these contractors, right, to rebuild the country. So then they getting paid for destroying people's lives. And like I say, this is the playbook that has gone back in time within Africa as well. I'm talking about the Middle East right now, but this has happened in Africa as well. And it continues to happen. And we have to open our eyes and our ears and learn to understand, like I say, what has really happened to our people and why it's more, again, than just bad governments, or that African leaders don't care about African people, right? And like I say, I get really emotional and frustrated about this, and I know this one is kind of long, but like I say, again, just bear with me. And if you have to watch it in 2 parts, then watch it in 2 parts. But I just really wanted to, get this out today, right? Because sometimes you just have to get things out when they are in you, okay? But I also wanted to say that even with the fact that they've been talking about this 20-year commemoration of the war in Iraq, right? You never hear anybody talk about the lives that have been lost on the African continent as a result of the war, and how the American government accused Saddam Hussein of getting uranium from Somalia, right? From getting uranium from the DRC, and specifically, again, from Niger for nuclear weapon productions, right? Which was not true, right? But it led to Niger being accused of providing Saddam Hussein with uranium, right? But again, it was a flat out lie. So regardless of the way they want to frame it, it was not true. And we know that this whole thing of weapons of mass destruction was not true, and the government was told that it wasn't true, but they went ahead with the invasion anyway, because that's what they do. They do what they want to do. They frame narratives in the way that they want to frame them, and they go ahead and do what they want to do. And this gave them reason and gave them a leadway into that region of Africa, right? And since that time to this one, things have gotten progressively worse, right? For those African countries, right? Because another interesting thing that I found out was that the initial documents that claimed that Hussein had acquired nuclear weapons from African countries came out of Italy. Now go figure, right? These are the people that's supposed to be so concerned about our people. And not only did this information come out of Italy, but it was the former colonizers, our former colonizers and subjugators, right? France, Britain, and the U.S., right? The big three, who continue to push the erroneous information included in this document, despite having overwhelming evidence to suggest that the information was fake, right? And so again, like I say, these are the things that we have to understand on a deeper level. And what another thing that I found that was so crazy was that Italy was the country that supported Iraq during the Iraq and Iran war, right? Now, isn't that crazy? Like I say, I know, like I say, I don't like war, and I know there's a strategy and there's a reason for it and all of that. But, this stuff is crazy, right? So 10 years before they put out this erroneous information about Iraq and Saddam, Italy was supporting Iraq and Saddam. Then they turn around 10 years later and accuse Iraq of trying to get uranium from African countries. And now of all of these Western powers again, France, Britain, the U.S., Germany, and probably Italy too, are flooding Niger and this Sahel region with military arms, small military arms, right, which are most likely falling into the hands of these militia groups, if they are not being channeled there on purpose, because that is a possibility as well. But now they're doing that, and like I say, the situation is getting worse, right? And they know what's going on, but they continue to push these narratives about instability, about hunger, about government corruption in these countries, right? And then these are the images and the narratives that are fed to the world. So it's just a game, for real. It's just a game. I mean, because with all of the efforts that is being made to improve in areas in Africa, the progress that we as YouTubers and social influencers are out there trying to show to the world, why is it that these Western officials, they never talk about that progress? They never talk about the accomplishments that Africans are making, right? Why don't they ever take photo ops in front of the beautiful places that are in Africa, or in these cosmopolitan cities and things like that? You never see that, right? The first thing they do is they go to these same distressed and famine-stricken areas and war-torn areas, which they have helped to create in a lot of cases, right? To the underdeveloped villages. Not saying there's anything wrong with village life. I'm not trying to disrespect anybody or anything like that, right? Because village life in some ways is better than all of this other crap, right? But they go to these areas that have been impacted by natural disaster and drought, or they go find, a group of women and lecture them about gender equality and sexual transmitted diseases and rearing their children and all this kind of stuff. Like America is the epitome of morality, right? And that we as African people, or that African leaders, need America to watch over them and to lecture them on what's right and wrong, right? They have some audacity, right? Especially with all of the crime and the violence and the racism and the substance abuse and the sexual addiction and the out of control youth in America, right? I mean, that's not the complete picture either. But why don't they ever show that part of America, right? Why is it they always just show the glowing attributes of this country? Because they want to, again, position, and I know, you're right, it's not their... it's not their responsibility to do that for Africa, but it's also not their responsibility to, like I say, show all the negative things that happens on the continent as well. Why don't they do that to these other European countries? If it's all about competition, why don't they show all the negative things that happen all over Europe? No, they're not going to show that. Basically, they're just going to do that in countries where, people with dark skin, okay? With African people, with black and brown people, or so, they call it. I'm gonna get ready to get off of here because I know that I'm going on and on. But I want to talk about one more thing, right? I mentioned earlier that First Lady Jill Biden was in Africa, a week or so ago, but it was reported, right? I wanted to talk about the fact that it was reported that First Lady Biden, she brought one of her granddaughters along with her. And, in the report, it said she brought her along with her to spotlight how girls and women can be powerful engines of change. Like Africa doesn't have powerful and progressive women who have been amazing change agents. Like I say, these people are just utterly ridiculous, right? Africa has a long history of women, powerful women rulers, it looks like until it was arrested, when they came in contact with the West and their male chauvinist cultures and religions, right? So Africa has a long history of women leaders who have been very instrumental in African liberation. And also to this day, Africa has had multiple women presidents, right? Maybe not enough, but they have had their share, right? And they also have had multiple prime ministers, and they do to this day. And while America has never, ever, ever had one woman president, and just recently, Kamala Harris was made vice president because she was chosen strategically to be on Joe Biden's ticket. Right? There's no way that she would have won, and I'm saying no way that she would have won if she was on a standalone ticket. I mean, they have never had a president or a vice president, but we need Jill Biden to come to African countries and lecture African women and African leaders about women gender equality. Come on now. It's just ridiculous. I know that in some countries that, women, the treatment of women, and I won't just say in African countries and countries all over the world, that women still have, there needs to be progress made in that area, but it's not just in Africa, right? We can say that in America as well, okay? And for me, I don't know, why didn't she bring along an African-American girl? How about like Alina McWhorter, right? She's the youngest black student. She was the youngest black student that was admitted into medical school in the U.S., right? And the second overall, as far as color is concerned. Why not bring her? She was the youngest intern ever to work for NASA, and she started this organization for called Brown STEM Girls for young black girls who are interested in STEM, right? I mean, I had an opportunity to see her receive a GUBA 2022 award last year in Rwanda. It was a blessing for me to attend to see this young lady and to see the impact of what being in Africa did for her and her self-esteem, on top of everything that she has managed to achieve for herself, right? This would have been somebody that these young girls in Kenya could have related to better, right? Somebody that they could have seen themselves in. She did not need to bring her granddaughter all the way to Kenya for that. Like I say, and I'm quite sure that there are plenty of young Kenyan girls that could have accompanied her to speak to Kenyan youth, right? Again, we do not need these images of Europeans to be flaunted in front of our eyes and in front of the eyes of our children in order to show some type of progress or something that they should aspire to. There are a lot of, like I say, proud African people and accomplished African people that these young people can aspire to. But if you constantly parade these people around and in their faces as the epitome of what humanity and success is, then what do you expect from the youth? They're going to continue to think less of themselves and continue to think, right, that they are in a inferior position. And we as African people need to challenge our leaders on that. I try to cut African leaders some slack, and try to come to their defense in certain on certain issues because I understand what's going on. But in this situation, no, I'm not cutting you any slack. It is time that you quit doing that, right? It is time for African countries to stop letting the West portray them in this way, right? They need to understand that this is why Africa gets no respect around the world, because everybody sees Africa as a beggar, as a child, right? And nobody respects a beggar, and everybody wants to tell a child what to do. You know, and I'm not saying that's true, but I'm saying that's what it looks like. And it's old and it's played out. And we as African people are tired of seeing that, right? We are tired of allowing Western voices in media and in academia to tell the world who we are as Africans, right? And it's just time out for that, right? So, and it's really time out for allowing Western leaders to continue to cause division and disruption in African countries with this strategic propaganda and rhetoric, right, that pits us against each other. Right. So again, I'm just saying to all of my African family out there, at any opportunity that you get, you know, you just need to challenge these narratives, challenge these voices. Like I say, go deeper, understand what's really going on, because again, it's not so much about us. It's about the young people, right? And we cannot allow them to continue to internalize these messages about who they are, right? And they need to understand the greatness that lies within them, right? And also understand that they can accomplish what they will, right? And that again, they need to ignore everything and challenge everything that comes out of the West, because you cannot, again, I'm going to repeat it, believe what they say when you see what they do. Okay? So again, I've been on here long enough, about an hour. I really didn't mean to be on here this long. But again, this message was near and dear to my heart. And it was something that was on my mind that I wanted to share with you, right? I wanted to give my audience something to think about. So let me know what you think, right? Like I said, I know I covered a lot there, but let me know what you think about the situation in Nigeria and Chad, and, you know, about the information that was supposedly given to the Chad president about Russian mercenaries trying to kill him, right? Let me know what you think about all of these Western leaders going in and out of Africa, right? And what you think the next move needs to be on the side of African leaders, okay? Leave your comment down. Leave your perspective down in the comments. I would really appreciate it, right? And please don't forget, again, to like. If you like what you heard, if it added value, please don't forget to like, to share, and subscribe to my channel if you have not done so already. And also don't forget to hit the notification button so you can be the first to be notified when I put up another video, right? And also, again, I am Marie Ya Jouf, the Real Africanist. You can find me here on YouTube at the Real Africanist. You also can find me on my blog, which I've been kind of neglecting a little bit, right? But you can find me on my blog and get to know me a little better, and sharing some of my experiences on the African continent, and also some good articles that I wrote as well on African history, African studies, you know, current African affairs at therealafricanist.com. Right? So remember to fight the power. Remember, there's always more to the story. And also remember, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. Okay? Peace, and I'll see you next time.